So, what's the topic for today and for the month? Change. Oh boy, we got some work to do. We got some work to do. Yes, the topic is change. What did you notice when you came in this morning? A lot of changes. You didn't get to come in the doors that most of you didn't get to come in the doors that you usually come in. That was certainly a change. What else? The chairs. How many of you raise your hand if you're not sitting where you typically sit? It's quite a few of you. Quite a few of you. What other changes did you notice? Your jeans. You like my holy jeans? There's a story behind the jeans, and these are not the holiest ones I have. The story behind it is when our son Jonathan was little, and we would leave Sunday morning. We would leave from church. You know, we were always dressed nicely. And as soon as we would get home, he'd say, "Mommy, would you please put on your mommy clothes?" And that always meant a pair of jeans, and usually a Winnie the Pooh T-shirt or jacket or something like that. It was mommy clothes. What else did you notice? Yeah, other side. And the video, right? We didn't have any prelude music. No prelude music, and we had hopefully what was a little bit of an edgy, confusing, disjointed, what the heck are they doing kind of video. And for those of you who are visiting the Unity Center the very first time this morning, we are having an immediate firsthand experience of the topic that I want to talk to us about today, and the topic is change. I think what's really important is for you to ask yourself, what feeling did you have when you walked into the room and things weren't the way they typically are? Confusion, discombobulation. We had one casualty, I understand. I was told that one woman came into the sanctuary, looked around, said to Terry, "Is this the way it's always going to be?" And Terry said, "No, the topic for the month is change. This is just for this Sunday." The woman turned around saying, "I'll come back next week." I think we should do this next week again anyway. That's a little nasty part of me that thinks we should do it again. So what feeling did you have? Probably a variety of feelings. You know, some of us respond to change much better than others. I'm reminded of probably my most recent personal experience of dealing with change. I was coming to the church one Sunday morning, and they were doing road work on Activity Road. And so I couldn't drive down Activity Road. It was shut off. And I had to take a detour. My first feeling was irritation. I was irritated because of the inconvenience. Now, mind you, the bigger me knows that was a really tiny inconvenience, but nonetheless, the first feeling I had was irritation. And then the next feeling I had was concern. I was concerned about how are people going to get to church this morning? There's enough barriers that keep people from coming into spiritual community. How are they going to get here? And then I thought, I don't want these feelings. This is not the way I want to go into speaking on Sunday morning. And I tried to quickly change the feelings, but I couldn't change the feelings until I changed the thought. And the thought that got changed was the thought that, oh my gosh, that road is getting resurfaced. No more potholes, a smoother road, and we didn't have to pay for it. The minute I held that thought, that very minute I held that thought, the frustration, the irritation, the feeling of concern completely disappeared. Completely disappeared. We are going to be exploring some of the ideas presented in Neil Donald Walsh's new book, When Everything Changes, Change Everything. When Everything Changes, Change Everything. Kind of a provocative title, would you not say? When everything changes, change everything. We know that change is inevitable, do we not? We know that change is inevitable, and yet most of us resist it. We're going to be looking at how do we stop doing that, and I think the timing of this is absolutely perfect. We'll be celebrating Easter the end of this month, and Easter is really all about rebirth. It's all about breaking out of our past and stepping into something new, something bigger, something grander. Well, what I know is that until we are willing to grow, until we are willing to change, we will not go forward. We will be stuck in the same place that we are right now. What is that expression? Everyone thinks of changing the world, but no one thinks of changing himself. If you want to change something, if you want something in your life you've never had, you'll have to do something you've never done. If you want something in your life that you've never had, you'll have to do something you've never done, which means you will have to change. You will have to change. I like what Alan Watts, a Zen teacher, once said, the only way to make sense out of change is to plunge into it, move with it, and join the dance. To plunge into it, move with it, and join the dance. What if instead of being in resistance to change, we chose to find a way to embrace it? We chose to find a way to use it to propel us forward, to grow and evolve us. If you think about it, that is the way it works in the natural kingdom, that when there is environmental change, systemic change, system change, living organisms must change and adapt and respond in new ways, or they will die. Or they will die. Walsh teaches in the book that one of the tools that we can use in dealing with change is this, that we are to change our choice of emotions around the change. Change your choice of emotions around the change. Change your choice of emotions around the change. Say that with me. Change your choice of emotions around the change. Change your choice of emotions around the change. In reading that section of the book, what you will find is that Neil kind of talks himself through this whole process, this idea of changing your choice of emotions around the change. And he comes to the same realization that I had out there on Activity Road, that I couldn't just turn my feelings off, because what I would have been doing was suppressing them. They weren't like a light switch that I could just throw and say, I don't want to feel frustration, I don't want to feel concern. I needed to do something first. And that something first I needed to do was to think about the change differently. I had to hold a different thought about the change. So while we may not be able to change everything out here, we can always choose the thought we're going to think about the change, and by choosing the thought we're going to think about the change, we will put ourselves in a different emotional experience. And so we're going to be challenged to look at and think about the changes in our lives from a God-sized perspective. Which would mean to absolutely hold to the truth that everything in our life ultimately works for our highest good. Everything in our life ultimately works for our highest good. Say that with me. Everything in our life ultimately works for our highest good. Touch your heart for a moment and make it true for you. Everything in my life ultimately works for my highest good. Everything in my life, everything ultimately works for my highest good. When I hold that thought, my relationship to the changes I find myself in will be a healthy relationship. It will be a relationship of power and strength, and it will be a relationship that opens the doors to creativity. Charles Fillmore said, and if you don't know, Charles was the co-founder of Unity. Charles Fillmore said, thinking is formative. Every thought clothes itself in a life form according to the character given it by the thinker. Thinking is formative. Every thought clothes itself in a life form according to the character given it by the thinker. So we get to choose. We get to be creative. We get to say, all right, here is the change that's happening. Here is the emotion I notice I'm having about it that I don't want to have. How can I put a different thought to that change? How can I create a God-sized thought about it? Well, I can do that by recognizing and remembering and demanding the manifestation of the principle that everything works together for my highest good. When I really get that, I see the change in an entirely different way. Does this make sense? Does it make sense? Does it take a little bit of effort? Does it take a different way of being? Sure, because the easy thing is to walk into change or have change thrust upon us, and the easy thing is to just react with resistance or to say, I'm going to leave. But have you noticed that you really cannot permanently escape all the changes that are happening in the world? Have you noticed that? I mean, well, physical death kind of works for a while, unless you believe in reincarnation, and then it doesn't work very well either, right? We cannot avoid the fact that there is constant change, and it is happening faster and faster than it has ever happened before. When we really hold the God-sized thought that everything, including the change we're in right now, the change in your family, the change in our world, the change in your finances, the change in your health, the change in your relationships, that every change has a potential to grow you and to propel you forward. When we get that, then we begin to realize that right where we are standing, with the people that we are standing with the experiences we are having, we are standing on holy ground. We are standing on holy ground. We are standing on sacred ground. We get that we are standing, to use the words that Russell Conwell used in the book he wrote, we are standing on acres of diamonds. Think for a moment, if you looked at the changes going on in your life, and you said, I'm going to have a God-sized thought about them, and the God-sized thought I'm going to have about them is, I am standing in this change as if I am standing on acres of diamonds. Would you approach that change differently? Your second service, you are supposed to be far more responsive than that. Far more responsive than that. Of course, of course. How many of you are familiar with Russell Conwell and his speech in his book, Acres of Diamonds? Raise your hand if you are. All right, I'm giving you a homework assignment. Now, I wish I were a professor and I could require that you do this homework assignment, but I can't, so I'll just put it out there with my strongest encouragement, and that is go Google Acres of Diamonds and read it or listen to it today. Acres of Diamonds. Russell Conwell, let me see if I still stuck my note in here. Russell Conwell was an American Baptist minister. He was an orator, a philanthropist, a lawyer. He lived from 1843 to 1925. He was a graduate of Yale, and he founded Temple University. One of the things that he is most known for, though, is this book that he wrote called Acres of Diamonds. And the book tells the true factual story of a man who was in search for wealth and prosperity through finding diamonds. And this man became so obsessed, if you will, about trying to find them that he sold all the property he had and went all around the world trying to find diamond mines and diamond fields, only to come back later to discover that the very land on which he had been living was a land of acres of diamonds, the Kimberley diamond fields, the Kimberley diamond mines. And so Conwell's book, Conwell's speech, which he gave all around the country at that time, was this idea that right where you are, you, me, right where we are, with the people that we live with where we are standing, where we are living and doing our work, we are standing on acres of diamonds. We just may not be seeing it. We may be running off somewhere else, thinking it's somewhere else, but we need to work it right where we are. Right where we are. That's a God thought to hold about the changes that we find ourselves in, especially the ones that we have not called upon for ourselves, but find ourselves thrust in. To recognize right where we stand. We are standing on holy ground. We are standing on sacred ground. We are standing on the potential of acres of diamonds. Another way that we hold a God-sized thought, and I'll close with this point, another way that we would hold a God-sized thought about change is to move away from frustration to fascination. To move away from frustration to fascination. Say that with me. To move away from frustration to fascination. There was a little girl who was out in the park with her mom, and she had hold of a favorite balloon. And as she's walking through the park, just a little girl enjoying this balloon, a gust of wind came and took the balloon right out of her hand. And the mother was very concerned in the split moment that the balloon went up to the sky. The mother was concerned, oh my gosh, she's going to throw a temper tantrum here. She loved that balloon. But instead, the little girl stood there and just looked up, big smile on her face, and said to Mom, Mommy, wow, look at it go. Fascinated, not frustrated. Fascinated, not frustrated. I stand in this change in a way that moves me to peace and joy. Think about a change going on in your life right now. Everybody have a change going on in their life right now? Anybody not have a change going on in their life right now? If you're awake, you got a change going on in your life right now. Absolutely. I want you to think about that change right now, okay? Really make it real in your mind. I stand in this change in a way that moves me to peace and joy. I stand in this change in a way that moves me to peace and joy. Affirm that with me. I stand in this change in a way that moves me to peace and joy. And one more time. I stand in this change in a way that moves me to peace and joy. Namaste.